Hey, Pastor John Perminsky here from Restore Church. Just want to welcome you to our podcast. For those of you who don't know me, I've been in the ministry for 30, going on 31 years, 27, almost 28 of those as the lead and founding pastor here at Restored Church. And I just want you to prayerfully consider supporting the ministry here at Restored Church. It can be a one-time gift or recurring gift. Just want to encourage you to do that. And welcome to our podcast. Thanks for tuning in. And here is today's message. Today we're blessed to have a very good friend of mine, Pastor David Christian. David, how you doing?
Doing great, thank you. I appreciate being with you this morning.
Oh my gosh. So, little history. I've known Pastor David for, better part of 30 years easily. And when we started our church, Pastor David was a part of the very original team 28 years ago this year.
Wow.
When we started the church. And so we go back. He was born and raised in Ionia here, went to Ionia High School. And in fact, we were just talking before we started recording about how he was a paper boy back in the day, and just kind of retraced his route that he had for a couple years. So while I don't know if I remember ever asking you, how did you get saved? Because I know you kind of had a similar, background to mine. You were kind of a partier, and how did you get saved?
I recently told my 11-year-old granddaughter, 12-year-old granddaughter, Evelyn, I was a scoundrel before I got saved at the age of 25. And no, it was my grandson who's like 10. And he turns to his mom and he goes, "Mom, Grandpa was a scoundrel before he got married." Yeah, I was a bad person. I mean, I was good on the outside, but my life and my heart were just black. The Lord showed me how black my heart was the moment I got saved. I was in my apartment living in Grand Rapids working for an architect.
Because that's what you went to school for, right?
Yes, I went to the University of Michigan out of Ionia High School, 6 years for my master's degree. Came back to Grand Rapids, got a job with a good firm, a pretty good-sized firm, 70 people. Wow. They did a lot of big projects. They don't exist anymore. WBDC, sound like a radio station. But that's where I was working, and a young woman in the bookkeeping department began to tell me about Jesus on my lunch hour. And I would listen, and inside I thought I was like effectively refuting her presentations, at lunch periods and things like that. But inside I was like caving. Slowly I was caving. And finally she asked me, "Do you want to receive Jesus?" And my brain said, "No, of course not." But my mouth said yes. And I was 25. That was back in 78.
Okay. Wow.
So
that's
how it happened.
Okay, help me, because I knew you had a background in architecture. But how did you go from that to like Ecuador or
right?
I mean,
yeah,
because Pastor David was a missionary. He's bilingual. He speaks Spanish fluently, teaches it. So how did you go from? Those were kind of the gaps. I knew bits and pieces, but I didn't know. So how did you go from that to there? I assume you were probably making good money at this large firm. And then
I was in the early. I mean, I was in it for 5 years, so I wasn't making a huge salary. I was kind of coming up from the under ranks.
Okay.
I would have eventually prospered pretty well, I'm sure, but because I did have a mind for it. But what happened was my sister, who's 1 year older, went into the Peace Corps in Colombia, South America.
Okay.
And this would be like probably 76. And she was wrapping it up in 78. And we talked. We didn't have cell phones, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we talked about me coming down there and spending some time with her. when she was done, and just travel around the country and see Colombia. Okay,
nice.
This is before the guerrillas took
Yeah.
over the mountains and the
Yeah.
landscape
Yeah.
with all their fear tactics. But so we could travel freely, by bus or train or whatever around the country. So I worked it out with my employer in Grand Rapids. Can I take 3 weeks off and go hang out with my sister, no salary, then come back and pick up where I left off? And they were fine with it.
Okay.
Well, after we made the plans, but before I left is when I got saved.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm here. Going around downtown Bogota, the big city of Bogota in Colombia, with my sister, and I'm seeing the culture. And at that time, there was tens of thousands of children uncared for, living in the underground of the culture.
Wow.
And you would see glimpses of them on the street, but they were hidden away for the most part.
Okay.
I have no idea what their life was like. I'm sure it was terrible.
Yep.
But it was a thing known worldwide, the children of Bogota. And when I saw that, it just broke me. I just literally wept. Like, not at length, but like I broke out into tears when I was there in Bogota. And I feel like that was something to do with a calling. I don't think I understood it in that moment.
Yeah.
But I was very drawn to Latin culture and to Latin America.
Could you speak any Spanish at all up until that
I
point?
took a 10-week course, so I knew the days of the week and how do you go to the bathroom,
Baño por favor.
But while I was there, I picked up a lot more.
Okay.
Because you're
Sure.
you're kind of in that environment. So, and then I came back to work, and I felt that God was calling me to change careers from architecture to missions.
Okay.
Got different encouragement along the way for that. So my wife and I literally got married in 81 and took off for Mexico. We literally followed Pastor Dwayne. He was a missionary at that time. We followed him with our car into Mexico. He helped us get household set up. We rented a house. And then I would just follow him on the weekends. During the week, we'd be in language school.
Okay.
For 6 months, full time, in Guadalajara, Mexico. And then I would go with him on the weekends wherever he was going to preach, all over the country.
So did you know Venancio Hernandez very well?
Yes, I met him when we first got to Mexico because it was their Christmas celebration. So we drove the 7-hour drive from Guadalajara to Ixmiquilpan.
Uh-huh.
And that's when I met him and saw his work, and I was amazed by this man.
One of the highlights of my life was being able to meet him in Ixmiquilpan when I was there. And I was expecting, this great big, spiritual giant of a guy, and this little, Mexican man walks out, Otobi Indian.
Yeah, that's right.
Walks out, and I'm like, wow, this is the man. And I remember him sharing stories about how he would be in the mountains, ministering in the mountains of Mexico, and how he ran out of gas, and he prayed, Lord, you turned water into wine, would you turn it into gas? And he poured water in his gas tank, and he drove home. Or how they would be ministering in villages and deliverance. And when they were driving back down the mountains, cows had jumped off of cliffs and stuff like, I'm just sitting there, I'm thinking, this is amazing. And I never got to see him again. And, as you know, he went home to be with the Lord, but hundreds of churches were birthed, through him. And so
I believe our church supported his widow, Celedonia, for quite a few years.
Okay.
I don't know if we're still supporting her.
Okay, wow.
I did meet her when I made a trip in 2014 to go minister with David Lant and his wife, Sarah. She was the daughter of Benito that pastored here in Grand Rapids.
Okay.
And so we were able to go visit Celedonia in Ixmiquilpan from Tulancingo, where he ministers.
Now, did his son, the only son I remember was Solomon, did he succeed him?
I think at first officially he did, but I don't know that it really continued. I think it was maybe sort of like taken from him, maybe.
Got it.
And we did stay with them, and they're great people. Solomon. And then there was his son Heido.
Yep.
But then he was a diabetic, and he actually passed away.
Oh.
And his widow, Miley, continued pastoring the church that he started.
Wow.
And as far as I know, she's still doing it.
What a woman.
Yeah.
So how did you make the leap from Mexico to more South America, right?
Right. So that's a big change. So
Why would that be such a cultural change?
well, it is culture that changed, not huge because same language,
All right.
same religious environment,
Okay.
right? So a lot of similarity. The food in Mexico is better,
Really?
but the food in Ecuador is very good. But Mexico is just unequaled as far as I'm concerned.
Okay. I'm sorry. I have so many questions that I could ask. What's the craziest thing you ever ate?
With Pastor Dwayne, while he was still a missionary,
Okay.
we were in a village, one of Venancio's churches,
Okay.
and Pastor Dwayne, as a missionary, he wanted to make sure I had the best eating experiences that you could have in Entre Comillas, between quotes, right? So, like, the first thing was the tripe, the intestines that they turn into soup.
Yep, heard of tripe
You
before.
know, I had that. That was one of the first things he had me eat right there in East Coupon. But we were in a village one time. He said, "Hey, I heard that you guys really enjoy eating the cactus worm, which is a little short grub. It's white, just like a grub up here.
Yeah.
And they know how to get them out of the cactus, a particular cactus plant, which is the same cactus that they get vodka from. But they have like 40 uses for this cactus.
Okay.
And those guys would take their machete and they lift up one of the leaves of this cactus and go tick, make a little slice, and a grub would fall right into their hand. They knew exactly where there was a worm in the bottom side of that leaf. And they went out and they collected like 30 or 40 of them,
Okay.
threw them in a fry pan, and that was our lunch. And
What
so
did
that
it
was
taste like?
French fries.
Okay. So it
Not that bad.
wasn't awful.
No, it wasn't.
But to them, it was like a delicacy. Okay.
Yeah. So you maintain a very respectful countenance, right?
Yep. Yep.
So.
Oh gosh. Okay.
Thank you, Pastor Dwayne.
Yes. Thank you, Pastor Dwayne. Oh, so you answer the call as a missionary, and you go through language school. And obviously when it's a calling, there's like a supernatural element to it. And so you pick up.
And I actually prayed for God's help to learn the language, and I really felt like he was helping me learn it.
Sure.
I really did.
Sure.
You know.
And so then
So we were in Mexico for like 3 years.
Okay.
And then, of course, you come back to renew your visas.
Yeah.
So some of those times we'd come all the way out to Michigan. And one of those times, a missionary that was a friend of Pastor Dwayne's by the name of Don Sims. He's no longer with us. He went home to be with the Lord. But he was preaching at Resurrection Life Church. And he declared that they were going to go to Ecuador and open a Bible school. He was very excited.
Okay.
And I felt like God was speaking to me through him. That was our next move. Okay. So, and we had already moved out of Mexico because God had told us, you're coming out.
Okay.
He made it very clear. I don't want to get into all the details, but
Sure.
he made it very clear we were leaving Mexico.
Yeah.
So we came out. Actually, the day of the big earthquake in Mexico City, that's actually the day we left. It was totally coincidence.
Oh.
But that was September 19 of 1985, I believe, that we drove out. And then around July is when Don Sims came through Resurrection Life Church and preached that Sunday. And I'm like, God's calling us to Ecuador, you know. And so I took the cassette tape of the message,
Jerry must thought you were crazy.
gave it to Jerry, didn't say a thing.
Yep.
And she listened to it. She goes, what are we doing here?
Did not.
So she got the same memo. So within 30 days, we were packed up and on the plane and off to Ecuador.
No way.
Yeah, August of 1986.
Here's what blows me away about you. Because of your background, your education, you're this very principled, line upon line.
And I'm a thinker, you know.
You're an
I'm a
analytical.
thinker.
You're a thinker.
I don't know if it's my weakness or my strength, but I am a thinker.
But you're so spirit led, and you're so unique in that aspect. Where I'm a freer spirit, and you're this very principled, you know, guy, and yet we're to go to Ecuador. So you go to Ecuador. What were your responsibilities? How long did you stay there before you came back?
So I came there to be the lowest member of the team, and there was a team of, I want to say, at least 10 missionaries that Don Sims had recruited.
From the U.S.?
And Daniel Williams and others had recruited Jerry Williamson to work in this Bible school. Okay. And it was on the whole 19th floor of a bank building downtown Quito, Ecuador. And so I was glad to be a part of the team. I didn't presume that I was going to be one of the teachers in this school. I'm just like, I'm here to serve.
Yeah.
So they put me over the dormitories, which means going to buy food for 2 dormitories, men's and women's, and making sure they did their chores to keep the houses in order.
Yeah.
And clean and everything, and just do devotions and different things to take care of the students that were part of the morning school that had left their towns or villages or whatever and come to be full-time at this school.
Okay.
There was also an evening school, which was for the locals. So the morning school usually had 40 to 50 students, and the evening school usually had around 150 students. So they were over 200 when I got there.
Yeah, that's pretty big.
And so they were making an impact. There was churches, and they went around, preached all over the country, and recruited pastors and students to know about this school and to send students. And so it was very successful and very impacting.
Now you're unique, because I know when Pastor Dwayne and Jeannie were, I think they served like 7 years or something as missionaries. When their grace was up, their grace was up.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem like your grace was ever up for that. It just seemed like God just continued to lead you.
It would usually be by the word of God, like a living, like a
rhema?
A rhema word that he would speak one way or another, either out of the scriptures or prophetically.
Jerry would confirm it.
Right.
Okay. So you're there in Ecuador, how many years?
4.5 years.
And I mean, I've heard all the crazy stories, like the van and
right, that was Mexico. Yeah.
Yep.
The traffic police stole our van, and they would sell them to the federales, which were like the FBI equivalent.
Yeah.
And we got it back in 21 days.
It's just crazy, crazy story. Did you at the end of those 4.5 years, would you say your grace had lifted?
Well, in some ways, the grace lifted because I saw that I was having less patience with people's driving habits. This is one of the things that it wasn't bothering me, and then it started to bother me.
You noticed things you didn't notice before.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
However, I did not want to leave missions. I did not want to go back to the States and be a pastor. That had zero interest for me. So Pastor Dwayne called me up in January of 1986 and said, pray about coming on staff because Bernie Grundyke is leaving and starting a church in Grand Haven.
Yeah.
So he needed a replacement for his...
I didn't know that you were the one that came on. And Bernie was the pastor that I was first ordained under and was a youth pastor for 3 years. So, okay, so...
Yeah. It turned out that I wasn't really the right person for that role, to be the second in command. I didn't have that kind of skill and gifting. But I did run probably over $60 million worth of building design over the next 12 years.
Yes.
Between phase 1, phase 2, phase 3.
Yeah.
Over 12 years. So I managed the architect. So I had the architect interview our different departments and find out what they needed and get that interpreted into architectural plans. I didn't design the building. People say that I didn't know. I didn't design the building.
But I knew you were the overseer.
I oversaw it as a pastor on staff.
Yeah.
So.
And you were on staff for like, what, 25 years?
25 years, yeah. From 1991 to 2015.
Okay. And we started our church in 97. And I'll forever be grateful for your influence there. So, okay. So let's bring it in to like present day. Explain to me how a guy that is an architect gets saved called to the mission field, serves in missions for
9 years.
9 years.
Total.
Yeah.
Start to finish.
Comes back, is on staff at a church for 25 years, and then feels called to the political circles.
Oh, sure.
So your life is just about all of these huge leaps from architecture to missions to staff in a large, megachurch, and then God begins to burden your heart for missions. I know when we first started talking about missions, I really had the exact opposite heart of a Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I didn't want to be involved. And
isn't that kind of the culture, though, today, is there's not a lot of interest in influencing civil government among the ministry, would you say, or not?
Oh, yeah. None of us, who are in the ministry believe in a separation of church and state, but few of us want to get involved, So when you first invited me to meet our state rep here, Gina Johnson, I'm like, David, I don't want to, I really want you to meet her, John. And I don't want to meet her, I could, and yet you were very persistent, because my impression of politicians were, even the ones that claim to be believers, that they're very plastic, they're very surfacey, there's no real depth.
I think people don't understand the degree to which lobbyists will get around a new elected person in public office and begin to influence them.
Yeah. No, we have no idea.
We have no idea. Gina, who's going to be your guest next week, she could talk about that for a while.
Oh, I can't wait.
Yeah.
I can't wait to interview her. So I go and I meet her. We go to the coffee shop here in town. Shameless plug, Sozo's great coffee.
Yes. Sozo's great.
You're welcome, Rodney and Mindy. But all I've seen is your role in political circles grow. You clearly, you wouldn't say this about yourself, because you're a very humble guy, but
Did everybody catch that?
Can you repeat that, please?
I'm humble and I'm proud of it. Your propensity, though, to get a master's, to master a second language, to oversee church, projects, and now I just shied away from the political world because I felt like such a fish out of water. I felt like so uneducated in those circles. Yet I think I made it harder to understand. Maybe I didn't understand all of the all of the language. It's like another world. It's like another realm.
Mm-hmm.
But now, currently, you are the Republican chair.
No, I'm not anything officially.
Okay, I thought that you were.
For a 2-year stint, but from when the grassroots kind of took over Kent County,
Okay.
which happened in a lot of counties in the United States during that same period. I asked if I could go to pray in the board meetings. They're actually open public meetings. I'm not using the right term, but they said no, but you can start a prayer committee. So I started a prayer committee through the Kent County GOP. So then they made me the chair of the prayer committee. So
Okay.
that was my role. But the grassroots people were voted out this past November. And so now it's what we call the establishment kind of back in leadership and control of the Kent County Republican Party.
Okay.
So I no longer have a role. But sometimes we hang out socially, the people that were in leadership for those 2 years. As a matter of fact, last night we were having burgers together, debriefing what happened in the last 2 months
Yeah.
and the last 2 years, and then how can we take it back in 2026?
But you're still actively involved at the House of Prayer that's right across the street from the Capitol.
Yes, I'm involved with Gina Johnson's ministry there,
Yeah.
which is kind of like a think tank of legislators and pastors, probably 15 or 20 different people that we get together every Monday morning by phone and strategize, talk about what's going on in Michigan, what's going on in the House, what's going on in the Senate, and then end up with prayer.
Mm-hmm.
And then they just started this morning. I couldn't make it, but they started another prayer meeting just for prayer only, not strategizing. Every week, 7 a.m. Same people praying over Michigan.
How do you discern who is genuinely a believer in political circles and who isn't? Because I would think that anybody that wants to go anywhere in the Republican Party, they want to cozy up to the believers because the church is a force.
Yes.
You want the seal from Right to Life. You want the church to embrace you.
Right.
How do you know? Who? Not everybody, like Gina, has been attending Western Michigan prayer meetings or whatever. So how do you know? I mean, that would be my.
Well, you know within a month or two by the decisions and the votes they make.
Okay.
In their new role in the House or the Senate. I mean,
So you might not know until they're making decisions.
Yes, but again, we don't really understand the influence of lobbyists and of behind the scenes party influencers.
So they could make a believer weaker.
They can, and it happens all the time.
Okay.
And so that's one of the reasons why Gina started the Michigan Pray, because she wants prayer and support to those who are naming the name of the Lord and are in public office. And so that's the purpose of Michigan Pray.
Yeah, and I've heard now many politicians, they speak in pretty bold and unapologetic, Christianese, and you can kind of pick up on, well, there seems to be some depth there. There seems to be some,
This person probably knows the Lord.
Yeah. And they want your prayers.
Yes.
And they don't see hanging out with a pastor as a waste of time. In fact, now what I think, and I'm sure it's just not in our day that we're seeing this, but I am seeing more and more clergy get involved politically.
Gina Johnson would love to see a pastor in Michigan paired off with every single legislator, where they would have like a one-on-one relationship where they would like discuss what's going on and then have specific prayer for specific struggles that.
What a boon that would be.
Phenomenal.
Nope, there's a line, you shouldn't cross that.
Yeah.
And, almost like a spiritual advisor. I don't know of any president that did not have the Billy Grahams and, the spiritual, counsel.
What if every representative in Michigan and every senator in Michigan, which there's 110 representatives and 38 senators, what if every single one of them had a pastor that was paired off to them that would maintain conversation, dialogue, and then pray together?
That'd be awesome.
Haven't you had a relationship like that with somebody important here in Ionia County?
Yeah.
We won't name any names, but their initials are.
Yeah. But I had to be, there's almost like a, quit being so afraid. And you can, there are things that you can say from the pulpit that I think pastors have been, lied to. I didn't know, wonderful, godly lawyers and all of these, they're fighting for, morality and, the church and on so many levels. I didn't know that I could state from the pulpit whom I'm voting for, but I can't.
Unknown caller.
Oh, sorry.
Turn my phone off. Oh, yeah, you got to turn your phone off.
I forgot.
That's classic. That's classic. So I didn't know. I don't have to be, so ashamed of saying, hey, this is a candidate that I'm voting for. you pray about who you're to vote for. You pray. And so I used to be near terrified. I tell politicians, like, you can come to the church. I'll recognize you from the pulpit. Feel free to ask them questions. I've gotten a lot bolder. And maybe being in the ministry as long as I have now, 30 years, 28 as a lead pastor, maybe you're to the point now where you're kind of taking the gloves off, and but I want to have my wits about me. I don't want to go into this naively, but I realize President Trump getting elected, that I'll call it a reprieve. I do believe he's a type of Cyrus.
I do too. In fact, I believe God spoke that to me.
Yeah.
When they were saying he was a Hitler back in 2015 and 16, I'm saying, Lord, is he a Hitler? And I just felt the Holy Spirit say he's a Cyrus. And I'm like, oh, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. Well, I felt like before the election, the Lord told me he's going to get elected, and there's going to be another attempt on his life, and it's going to soften him. He's going to be loved, and he's going to love, and he's going to be grateful for the church. And I think we're seeing all of those things come to pass. How do you see America, government, looking down the road? How do you see things changing, better, for worse?
Well, you just opened a big can of worms.
I'm sorry, but go.
I mean, in a global sense, I feel like we're in the time of where the builders of Babel 2.0, Babel 1.0 is Genesis chapter 11, the Tower of Babel.
Yeah.
This is now the latter day phase that we're in, where they're trying to pull together this one world government. And so a lot of things that are happening are them forcing things in that direction.
Okay.
God is definitely tamping it down and suppressing it through the church, through our voice, through prayer.
Yeah.
And so things that they want to happen are not happening. And so they're really upset. They're angry.
Yeah.
Go read Psalm chapter 2.
Yeah.
Kiss the Son.
Yeah. Why the nations rage.
Yes. Right.
Yeah.
And so I believe Donald Trump, I believe America, if you believe in the 6,000 year view of history, which was a literal interpretation of the Bible.
Yeah.
And America being founded in 1776, that is 96% of the way through human history. Okay? Because it's 5,776 years out of 6,000. America shows up 4% before the end of the age to be a beacon of freedom worldwide. And hasn't America influenced freedom around the world?
Nobody's given like we've given. Nobody's. Yeah.
Right. So it's been a role that God placed us here for. However, there's this struggle going on between these two kingdoms, kingdom of light, kingdom of darkness. America is right on the front lines of that. And so we're seeing America pulled apart because of that reality.
Yeah.
So I believe that our role is to just stand strong.
Yeah. I mean, did you ever think that in our day and in our age, you would see pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas demonstrations in the streets of America?
No.
I never thought that I would see anti-Semitism to the degree that we are now. I mean,
and I'm so grateful for you being on that page or that orientation. And Pastor Lee Cummings and Pastor Dwayne are very strong in that sense of, I call it Zionism.
Yep.
I'm a pro-Zionist.
I'm a pro-Zionist, absolutely.
And I believe that to be anti-Zionist is to be anti-Semitic.
Antichrist.
I mean, it's like, okay, they killed 6 million Jews, and now you don't want them to have a country when their enemies have 22 countries?
Yeah.
What's wrong with you?
And you're
It's plain as day.
And you're gonna, in your ignorance, say that Hitler was right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on.
And some aren't actually saying that. It's unbelievable.
Burning the American flag.
Yeah.
So here's my plan. This is my answer. I say everybody that is pro-Hamas, we provide a ticket for them to go live over in the Middle East. We will ship you there. On our expense, we'll ship. No, the church is not doing this. But I think that they should do this. Go over there. Experience Sharia law.
Right.
And see if you would have the freedoms here in America.
Or go to Manchester, England and experience Sharia law.
No way.
Yeah.
Dearborn.
250,000 young British girls have been raped by the incoming Islamic population.
No.
And
And
it
what
shows no signs of slowing down, and the government is not any help whatsoever.
in what span of time and how many year period?
I would say like the last 20 years.
That's insane.
But it's increasing, So
Yeah.
anti-Semitism is definitely on the rise, and we have to do our part.
What would you say, let's, for sake of time, say that, wait, how are we doing on time? Okay. That the church has not stepped up like it should. What do you feel like the church needs to do, not just because we're, believing God for revival and because we're pro-Israel? And
That's our top priority.
Gotcha.
The gospel, obviously.
Oh, but don't you think that working hand in glove with that is also taking a stand for the things of God? We just can't say, hey, we're believing for revival. Oh yeah, it's real tragic what's going on with culture today.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to address that. That's just like a whole kettle of fish. So how do you feel like the church needs to assume its role, assume its post, so that we can be a greater voice to our culture today?
Okay. Very simple answer. I bet every one of your listeners knows Jeremiah 29:11.
Sure.
I know the plans I have to prosper you, to give you a future and a hope.
Yeah.
So if you back up one verse, this is the Jewish people in captivity in Babylon.
Yeah.
And he tells them to accept their captivity and make the best of it and be a blessing to the country and the city where you are.
Pray for the
Add
peace.
value where you are.
Pray for the peace for them there, and you'll have peace.
Yeah. So how that translates for us is we need to teach disciples that as part of being a disciple, they are a citizen of an earthly country. Make the best of it. Well, this happens to be America.
Yeah.
There's no better place to make the best of it.
Yeah.
And to waste that opportunity, I don't think it's something to really brag about.
No.
I think we should explore. I think pastors can help their members, their attenders, to see themselves as biblical citizens, which have a responsibility in that sense as part of being a Christ follower, is be 100% there in the country where you live and do what you can, what God gives you opportunity to do.
I'm preaching. I'm going to dip into discipleship Sunday, and I'm going to make the statement from the pulpit that we don't have any discipleship classes here, because you don't need a class to be told to invest your life in someone else, into the community, into the, I think we just...
Jesus didn't have a Tuesday night class for discipleship.
No.
They were just disciples because they were following him.
And
that's what it is.
And how do you separate yourself from the very humanity that you've been placed in the midst of as a believer? How do you do that? How do you turn a deaf ear to all that's going on around you if you're truly a believer in Jesus? We're called to be leaven. We're called to be salt. We're called to be light. And so, yeah, I mean, you're only adding to my message. Hey, thank you for listening. We will see you in our next podcast. God bless.